All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this January 22nd meeting of the Somerville School Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the School Committee will be conducted via hybrid participation. We will post an audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville website and local cable access government channels. With that, will you roll call, please?
Through the chair, Ms. Barish. Mayor Ballantyne.
Sorry.
Ms. Barish, present. Mayor Ballantyne. President Owen Campen. Mr. Green.
Here.
Mr. Biton. Ms. Biton.
Here. Hello.
Dr. Ackman.
Here.
Dr. Phillips.
Here.
Ms. Krebchen.
Here.
We have quorum.
We will now have a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now introduce our interpreters. Spanish, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Eric. I'm the Spanish interpreter for this session.
And Portuguese, please.
Yes, I am Sue De Carne. I am the Portuguese interpreter here tonight.
And Haitian Creole. Okay. We'll come back. We now have our report of our student reps. We're so happy to see you here this evening. Oh, Andre will show you how to turn on your mic.
So
If you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
I'm Ana Sofia Protopapas. I'm a junior at Somerville High, and I'm 16. So the first thing we wanted to bring up was asking about field trips and funding for that, because I think I've only been on one field trip in my entire 3 years here, and I just feel like it's very fulfilling and a really good way to learn and like retain a lot of that. And then just on another note, we have our, I think, Valentine's Day Cupid Crush Bash dance on the 26th, which is next Friday, or this Friday. This Friday.
Hi, I'm Marcia Narbachway. I'm a senior at Somerville High School, and I'm also on school committee. We wanted to just run our idea here that we have class cups going on at the high school right now. Right now, this is a pilot program, but it's been really successful. We have seen a lot of people not being in the hallways as much, and there are points being given out to all classes, and it's actually working because now people are really competitive about oh, who wants the pizza party? Oh, what's gonna happen? And there will be a meeting to discuss any kinks on Wednesday. And then on the note of field trips, I have a little poster here. The SHS Orchestra and Chorus are going to New York City, and we need help fundraising, and we will be going in April. And it's basically just to look at the arts. We're going to be going to museums. It's an overnight trip, and we're going to be looking at Broadway shows and seeing all the music. And that's our report for today.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for our reps? Mr. Green?
First of all, thank you for bringing up the field trip thing. I feel like we discussed this with the Student Advisory Committee last year, and forgive me, I could be completely misremembering this, so if I am, someone please stop me. But I feel like there was a pledge by the high school administration to get back to us on that, and so I'd love to follow up on it. Because it sounds like, and certainly my experience with the overnight trips at the high school is they're almost always sponsored by clubs or extracurricular activities, would suggest that perhaps our teachers are having trouble either logistically or for a reason coming up with subject-based field trips. And if there's a place we can give them support, we should do so. Because I certainly know basically the only thing I really remember vividly from my high school experience at this point are the field trips.
Does anyone want to respond to that? Get back to us?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for your feedback, and it's great to see you here in person. Can you just, excuse me, Mr. Green, if you would please just repeat the ask there, and I'll make sure we can follow up.
And again, I could be misremembering this, but I feel like when we discussed this last year, the high school administration said they'd look into it and get back to us. And so, if there are challenges that teachers were having with field trips or things we could do to help encourage that.
Ms. Parrish?
Thanks to our student reps for being here tonight. Do you know if there are any specific fundraising activities planned for the orchestra and chorus field trip? I know that there's a GoFundMe, but are there events that people might want to put on their calendar or anything like that?
We already had our winter concert, which was a really big fundraiser, but I think the spring concert will also be a fundraiser. We'll let you know when we get the date.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Patel?
Chair Corruption, to the students, was there you mentioned there's a GoFundMe, is there an Instagram handle or something that we could find these things on? Oh, I have to come get paper, I love it, thank you.
Could you just elaborate a little more on the contest you were talking about? How are people earning points, and just what does that look like?
So it's supposed to be kind of an incentive idea where if it's similar to Harry Potter, where if you're doing the right thing, exhibiting Highlander habits, which encompasses a lot, but getting to class on time, being respectful, not fooling around, you're awarded points. And at the end, whichever class, meaning freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, has the most points wins. I think it's a pizza party right now. Yes. And I think we can deduct points if there is misbehavior. And I think currently the freshmen are winning and the seniors are in last place. Which really surprises me.
Ms. Parrish?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Krepshin. If I remember correctly, a person can earn points for attending athletic events. And I think someone asked me if they could also win points for attending things like theater performances or musical performances and things like that.
Yeah, we had a video that we showed to all of the classes, but any extracurricular like event, like theater, robotics, anything is 10 points. But if you go to girls' games, it's 20 points because we want to increase the participation at girls' games.
Nice, well done. Are there any other questions? Please.
Through the chair, it was almost 7 o'clock. I didn't see the two of you. My heart was broken when I know that you promised you're going to be here. I am thrilled that your presence is here. It is important for us to have you and as many representatives as possible, but this question about advocating for academics that are meaningful, that are grounded in experiences that are real, is also something that I'm glad that you're voicing your thoughts right now, and I hope that this resonates in the chamber, and we should definitely look at ways in which your learning happens, not just in the walls of the high school, but outside of that. But I really wanted to thank you for being here, being so eloquent, and also for being such a great representatives of the high school. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. And of course, I know you guys are busy, but you're always welcome to stay and talk about anything else that's on our agenda. But also, feel free to leave as you need to. With that, we have approval of minutes. October 16th, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the October 16th minutes.
I have a motion by Ms. Barish, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to public comment. We have one person signed up in person, and then we have 5 people on Zoom. So I will read the instructions first, and then I will go down the list. Welcome and thank you to those who have signed up for public comment. Speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to present their material. However, the chair may limit comments to 2 minutes based on the number of individuals signed up to speak. We will let everyone have 3 minutes based on the numbers we have. Speakers should begin their comments by stating their name and address, or in the case of district employees, their role within the district. The chair of the meeting, after a warning, reserves the right to terminate speech which is not constitutionally protected because it constitutes true threats that are likely to provoke a violent reaction and cause a breach of peace, or incitement to imminent lawless conduct, or which contains obscenities. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between the public and the committee. Members of the committee will not reply to public comment in the course of the meeting, though individual members may follow up and items from public comment may be taken up in future meetings. The school committee will not hear personal complaints of school personnel nor against any member of the school community in public session. Individuals may address topics on the agenda or items within the school committee's scope of responsibility, such as the district goals, district budget, goals and policies, or role of the superintendent. The public is encouraged to submit comments in writing for inclusion in the public record. And with that, I will call up Ryan Williams.
Ryan Williams, 47 Kingston Street, and I'm speaking just as a parent and not on behalf of anyone else. I'm speaking to express my support for the consideration of a middle school in our community. I believe that a middle school could provide a number of benefits for our students and better address the whole child at a critical time in their development, including their social, artistic, athletic, and educational outcomes. It offers a more developmentally appropriate learning environment, more opportunities for learning and growth, consolidation of resources, and a better transition to high school. This is the age where kids finally get to spread their wings, explore their identity, and find their people. All of that is much easier if we build a bigger nest for these fledgling teenagers. By way of comparison, 17 out of 21 of the MAPC inner core cities have some form of middle school model. Somerville does not need to necessarily be an outlier. These communities cover the full range of populations and offer many opportunities for comparison. I urge the district and school committee to explore and investigate those differences. As a parent of a middle schooler, I can attest that most middle schoolers do not get up and go to school every day because of their enthusiasm for math and chemistry. They go to be with their friends, they go to participate in activities, they go so they can play with their team. that we manage to educate them at all at this phase of their development is more of a testament to our middle grade teachers rather than our students' intrinsic motivation at this phase of their development. Just ask yourself, how many of your fondest memories and motivating experiences at that age were extracurricular rather than curricular? With our current system, we distribute resources all over the city, often inequitably, not because of bad intentions, but simply because of practical limitations, or we necessarily duplicate them with all the inherent inefficiency that entails. By physically separating these resources, we create barriers. The ability to participate, explore new interests, succeed and fail should not be primarily determined by the ability of parents to shuttle kids around or their remote work flexibility. Bring it all together in one space. Make joining a new activity as easy as walking down the hall. Create a bigger pool of friends and allies. We often talk about how to get resources to kids, but forget that the greatest resources to teenagers is most often each other. If you want to address the whole child, let them meet their best friend. We should also not ignore the benefits to elementary students. If we allow our elementary school leaders to refocus on reading and math fundamentals rather than chasing vaping and bathroom vandals, I guarantee that we'll have better educational outcomes. The creation of a middle school immediately opens up room at all of our local schools for pre-K, special education, early intervention services, and after-school space. Exactly the things that we talk about here every meeting. As we heard at the last meeting, we have an opportunity to shape the vision of Somerville schools through 2050. There's no better time to consider our educational models right now than when we have the ability to make literal, concrete choices about our building configurations and future of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to our remote public commenters. First, I have Ksenia Samolakovalova. Hopefully you'll pronounce that for me so I know how to pronounce it in the future.
Hello, my name is Ksenia Samachvalova. I live at 75 Irving Street in Somerville, and I have two kids at Brown School, a 5th grader and a 1st grader. The first thing on my mind is 6th grade and where my child and his classmates will be ending up when they go to 6th grade. We were just told that Weston Kennedy schools, those are the two schools closest to Brown, and they're proximity school for majority of the 5th graders at the Brown right now. Combined, Weston Kennedy have capacity of 20 to 21 students at the moment. That is not enough to fit 29 students that are right now in 5th grade at the Brown. We did unofficial polling of the parents, and so far everyone, and we got responses for 20 people, are picking those two schools so their kids could end up with their classmates. We know that in the past, every 3 years, there's been an extra classroom at the Kennedy. Last year was supposed to be the 3rd year, but the class getting out of Brown was not big enough and they didn't really need capacity. But could we add this capacity now or somehow resolve this issue so that we could have kids who are graduating from Brown go to their first or second choice school, which is Kennedy and West, so they could all be together at either Kennedy or West. And my second point is a plea to the superintendent and the school committee. When you look at capacity for schools and the school system, could you please consider what Somerville schools could look like if we had middle schools instead of the K-8 model? If you ask parents of elementary school kids what they would want and whether they want to send their small children to a school in their neighborhood that a 4-year-old preschool or a 5-year-old kindergartner could easily walk to, they would tell you that they'd like a neighborhood school. They would not say we want a mega K-8 school, not close to Winter Hill or Brown. They would want a neighborhood school in their community. So if we could entertain the idea of having elementary schools and middle school, we could have enough space in elementary schools for pre-K and after school, and the middle schoolers could be in a space that's more adequate to their state of development, as Ryan Williams just talked about. So I want to rehash points about some of the concerns and issues and opportunities for middle schoolers that are quite different from pre-K through 5. Thank you.
Next up, I have Eric Cambron. Okay, it looks like Eric is not on Zoom anymore, so I will move to Elena Ganotakis. Please forgive me if I mispronounce that.
No problem. Great job. My name is Elena Ganatakis. I live at 26 Powderhouse Boulevard. I'm a mother at 3, 2 students at the Brown School and 1 at the Capiano School. And I wanted to make a public comment to build on Yesenia's comments. The Brown School is the only elementary school in the town that does not have a middle school. Traditionally, as Ksenia mentioned, these students have been placed together as a cohort, split between West Somerville and Kennedy. We were just informed as parents on Thursday night that there are not enough spots. There are 20 spots available at those 2 schools for 29 children. We've been told that on the issue of keeping the students together as a cohort, the only other school that could accommodate those 9 children at once would be the Winter Hill School, which is now in East Somerville at the Ed Gurley School. And 5 of the 7 children that have that as a proximity school are being given the option to choose West or Kennedy as their proximity school, which is sort of saying, you know, we understand that's not ideal, so we're giving you the option to choose other proximities. As everyone's aware, this age is a really sensitive age. A lot of children are terrified about going to middle school, and it seems inequitable that students at the Brown School are put in the position where some of these children are going to be just taken away from their peers and facing middle school on their own or with very few peers. Of the children that don't get placed in one of those schools, some people are applying to private school, may go to private school, so it may be even fewer numbers that are separated from their peers. A lot of the parents are a little bit dismayed that we haven't been given more information, engaged in the process. A couple of parents have reached out to the superintendent's office, haven't really received a response on this, haven't been engaged on it. We feel like it's a really big decision and a pretty extreme path that's being taken for our children. So we would appreciate if we could put this process on hold, have some time to engage with the school committee, engage with the superintendent to come up with some solutions, such as they've done in the past, adding an extra classroom to the Kennedy School, or expanding the class sizes where it's possible so that our children can stay together as a cohort going to middle school and won't be isolated and sent to schools where they don't have friends during this very sensitive time. Thank you.
Next, I have Jody Nemser Abrahams.
Hello. I'm not able to see a timer, so I will do my best to be within the 3 minutes. Thank you. My name is Jody Nemser Abrahams. I live at 80 Hinckley Street in Somerville. I am a parent of 2 Winter Hill students, 1 in 1st grade and 1 in pre-K, and as well as a younger kid who will eventually be in the school. And I'm reaching out thank you, I can see it now, thank you, for a couple of things. I wanted to mention, as we know, the Winter Hill community is going to be at the Edgerly for a number of years, and we are still experiencing issues. Most recently, the 2nd floor bathroom was broken, and apparently DPW was not able to service the bathroom for far too long. And this feels like we're repeating the issues that we were having with our decrepit building on Sycamore Street all over again. So I want to lift this up and encourage the school committee to put whatever pressure is possible to make sure that the Edgerly building is being taken care of as promptly and as with the greatest care possible. Additionally, we still don't know about busing for next year. There has been no announcement or anything. I can tell you that, that moving over to the Edgerly has really impacted a lot of families. It changes it from being a walking school to having to drive take public transportation, bike, and some other mechanism for a large majority of the community. So I urge you to find out information for us and make this transparent so that we know what's going on with busing. Additionally, we still don't know what's going to happen with our school. It was really great to hear other people on the call talking about middle school. I think that's something that I am personally just seems like a good idea to me. I am not from an educator background, so I don't have that expertise, but I definitely want that to be explored, and I hope the school committee will. I saw it's on the agenda later today, which I'm excited about. I do want to say I really hope that that conversation does not come at the expense of delaying any progress on Winter Hill. Furthermore, I hope that the Winter Hill building can be taken as that. We lost our school building on Sycamore Street. We need a new building for the Winter Hill community on Sycamore Street. These other conversations about what happens with the middle school, what happens with Brown, what happens with making it so that we can have capacity for all of our programs, that seems like that is in... they don't all need to be conflated. We need Winter Hill. I also just I encourage the school committee to really have as strong a possible voice to the city about these issues. You are our link. So thank you very much for listening, and that's it.
Next, I have Eric Nygren.
Hello, my name's Eric Nygren. I live on Irving Street and have 2 children at the Brown School. I'd like to reiterate the importance of having enough capacity. I'd like to reiterate the importance of having enough capacity for walkable schools, especially for K through 5 within our city. The recently presented capacity study was showing that West and Kennedy were both being near full, and some of the comparative options proposed for handling Winter Hill and Brown School improvements didn't include consideration of where students live. We used to have the Hodgkin School in addition to Brown and West Somerville neighborhood schools in Ward 6 and 7. The west side of the city has also had the West Middle School until the early 1980s, with 2 other middle schools distributed through the city. Relocating the Brown School out to Trum Field would only leave West Somerville Neighborhood School left covering Wards 6 and 7. The situation this year where Brown students graduating from 5th to 6th grade want to stay at either West or Kennedy, where there isn't enough space for them, further highlights this. Similarly, moving Winter Hill School away from its current site would also similarly have impacts to the students living near it. The walkability of Somerville is an important part of the draw of our city and also an important environmental consideration. Having elementary and middle schools well distributed around the city, as the city had for much of its history, would be far better for our city longer term than consolidated mega schools. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, that concludes public comment, which brings us to the report of the superintendent. Dr. Carmona.
Through the chair, thank you everyone for being such a receptive audience. I just wanted to start with fun news. This Saturday, the 27th, we're going to have a contest or a competition with Phillips Academy. It's a quiz show team that is related to WGBH. So our Highlander competitors will be ready for Friday, so for this Saturday. So we are excited that they will be competing, and all power to the Highlander team. I just wanted to give a quick update on the entry plan update, the report that I shared with you at the beginning of the school year. I wanted to share with you that the work that we're trying to do has been a strong outreach to families. We're trying to include a diverse swath of our demographics in our work. So I am excited to share that we have met with almost 40 different separate groups. These have been focus groups that have allowed us to actually gather a lot of information as to how folks feel about the things that are working and the things that are not working in our district. So in your packet, I included that report. We have 8 parent groups, 6 student groups, at the high school and a small group of middle school students at the Healy and at the Argenciano. And we also have had 26 staff groups across 10 different schools and 16 departments. So all in all, we have around close to 3,300 different responses from our service. So I feel that we have so far gathered a very comprehensive database on the needs and wants of our community. So there are also in that report that I include to you, that I share with you, some preliminary themes that we think are worth highlighting right now. We have some of the strengths that have been shared with us is the commitment to equity, the commitment to social emotional learning, as well as the strong support that our SFLC team has in regards to interpretation and translation services. There's also a great understanding of how CTE contributes to our community, and as well as an overall positive community feel across the district. Some of the areas of improvement is curriculum updates. There are some concerns as to how our system of curriculum has to be updated. I think we have had a strong system that was really worked during the pandemic time, the pandemic years, and there is a call for an update on our system, the curriculum plans, and also more instructional support for educators. And the OST expansion, I have heard it from all different groups, as well as how our facilities and our grounds are being maintained and kept. So those are some of the preliminary themes. We're committed to continuing this work and making sure that the information that we gather from families is also processed in the right way. So in the next month, towards the end of February, I will be doing some reports on the entry information that we gather. And after we collect this information, we will be meeting with groups to actually do some root cause analysis. One of the things that I was mentioned today was the middle school, and I think it has kept up coming in different places. So we will be having some opportunity to discuss that at the end as part of one of the new business in my presentation. But that is as far as the report for this part of the report. I know there's something about the calendar update, or there's a calendar update in the report.
Dr. Paulson-Davis, take it away.
Thank you, the chair. Good evening, everyone. So I bring before you the third draft of the school year calendar for the 24-25 school year. I have made some tweaks to the calendar based on feedback, mainly from Mr. Baton, who I believe is listening in or participating virtually, so received a good amount of great feedback, and so I will talk through the shifts that have been made, and we'll be excited to receive any questions or suggestions. In the August section, I revised the text to just say, I consolidated the text, on the 26th and the 27th line where it says educator professional development. In the previous draft, those were two different lines, and that was to clear out the crowding of the lines around the word November that's below it. I made a change. There was an error in that the third in the October month, the 3-4 for Rosh Hashanah was bold, and I made that regular plain text. In December, I have shifted the language a bit to winter recess begins 12:20 at noon, and then classes resume on 1/6, because it previously, the previous draft said winter recess December 23rd through January 2nd, which was a bit unclear given that there was a PD day on the 3rd and that students really didn't return until January 6th. So I revised that language to make that a bit more clear. Again, changing in January, similarly, I changed the 6th to say classes resume, and I added in next to 3 Kings Day, and just made January 1st through 3rd. These are very small, minor changes, but I just want to talk you through everything that's been changed. January 1st through 3rd to indicate no school. And previously, it was not listed in that way. And then I did underline Good Friday in the previous draft. That was not underlined. And then on page 2, I changed some, there was, the verbs, the tenses did not match, or the verbs did not match in some of the paragraphs. So I just revised the language a bit, just adding an S after respects and acknowledges to match the proper, the singular way in which we've used Somerville Public Schools. And the only other change that I've made was that I removed from the second page, I removed Patriots' Day, which is state holiday, and President's Day, federal holiday, and just indicated those on the first page where they fall within breaks. So those were pretty small details, but I wanted to just talk you through each one of them. I'm also happy to provide a highlighted copy or the previous version if that's helpful, but those are the revisions that were made.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Dr. Ackman?
Can I move to approve the 24-25 school calendar? I'm going to do that.
Second.
You may do that, and you may second it. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Did you have a question?
Sorry. Is member Baron Batone on the phone? I thought he wanted to ask some questions, but maybe he doesn't. It's just some things came up in rules.
Mr. Green, did you have a?
I'm just gonna say if they aren't substantive to the actual like dates that we are on and off school, like I have a couple edits like to make to like the holiday page, but it's not relevant to the actual calendar. I'm gonna just do that offline. Like, so if Mr. Patel's questions are about the actual like days in which we do not school, then he should ask them. But if not, can we do that offline?
Yeah, I was just going to say through the chair that I do not have any comments at this time. So thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was just going to say that I don't have any comments.
Oh, okay, great. But now we know it's working, so if you want to raise your hand later in the meeting, feel free to do so. So with that, we had all in favor of the calendar. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have a calendar.
Thank you. Through the chair, the other component of the superintendent's report is the SEU requested to have some feedback twice a year in regards to buildings and grounds and also to other areas that we asked the city to share some information. They provided 2 memos. So there was one that was a combined memo that Assistant Superintendent Massa worked in collaboration with the city, and also another memo that came from carbon neutral and parking availability through the office of the mayor, through Mr. Reich. So I'm going to have Assistant Superintendent Massa share the combined document that was created with the city.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair. So before I give some highlights on this memo, I just want to thank the mayor's office, thank the Department of Public Works, the Department of Infrastructure and Asset Management, the Office of Sustainability and Environment, and the Mobility Division, because we truly worked in partnership to create this memo based on a collective bargaining agreement where we have biannual updates on 3 different areas. So the first one is the partnership with the city to maintain safe and healthy teaching and learning environments within school buildings and school grounds. So we are working in partnership with the city to maintain healthy teaching and learning environments, and we're also committed to being responsive to the building and grounds needs of all schools in SPS. We will continue to partner with the goal of eliminating all non-academic barriers that negatively impact teaching and learning. So some highlights. The first section is around air quality control post-COVID. So MERV 13 filters were added at every school. The Federal Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, has tested these filters and really confirmed that they capture small enough particles to address viruses and bacteria. The filter replacement protocols have been revised as well to shorten the service period, which means it improves the environmental conditions as well as the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, HVAC performance. UV lighting has been installed in the hair handling equipment wherever it is feasible to do. And these lights have been shown to eliminate mildew, mold, to kill viruses and bacteria in the airstream, and to prevent contaminant buildup in the HVAC components, which when you get those things, the components do not run as effectively as they need to. So in October of 2022, SPS, we were awarded a $700,000 Improving Ventilation and Air Quality grant from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This is the second year we've had this grant because we were able to forward money from last year to this year because we weren't able to get a bunch of work done. We are partnering with DPW to do that. And some of the work will include replacing various cooling and heating equipment at the Brown, at the Healy, at the West, and at the Kennedy. And then there's a section that we have on resiliency. The city's Office of Sustainability and Environment is currently hiring its first resiliency planner. This position will be tasked with leading a citywide assessment of all buildings, including our schools. And there will also be a resiliency task force. And we'll partner with the city again to make buildings and grounds more resilient to climate stressors and their consequences. And then the next section for us is efficient systems and work order processes, and this is around 311 submissions. One of the things that we've done in partnership is we created a 311 dashboard that I have access to along with the city so I can better, more effectively monitor 311 submissions, prioritize ones that need immediate attention, and to review on basically a daily and a weekly basis. The dashboard is about 3/4 of the way done. There's some additional functionality that I'm asking the city for because I want to be able to find out from each school what are their priorities and what submissions have been being submitted on a daily basis. And then myself, the chief, city chief administrative officer, and the DPW commissioner will be meeting on a monthly basis to review these submissions and progress. So I'm really excited about this one because this is the first time we will actually have a dashboard that we can view because the current system it's very difficult to get a read on what submissions really need priority. The next section is the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, or AHERA. AHERA is a reporting requirement for all school districts, but within Somerville, DPW, the Department of Public Works, is the designated department for the AHERA management plan and compliance. All DPW staff have completed the AHERA awareness training, and that took place on December 28th of 2023. And then we will move on to snow removal. Again, we share a high priority with the city of keeping students and families safe on their way to and from school. So some of the priorities for snow removal. First priority is school entrances, drop-off areas, staircases and walkways. Second priority are school crossings. In addition, the city continues to pilot its pilot of sidewalk snow clearing on Broadway and school streets. And we also are looking to improve safe passage for Winter Hill students. So DPW is working proactively with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR, to make sure that the Otis Street Bridge is clear of ice and snow. And then the second section, and I'll read these on a high level, is a partnership with the city to become carbon neutral. So as various building systems require replacement, the city will be identifying and installing new technologies that reduce each building's carbon load improve resiliency, and energy efficiency. So some of the projects that will be taking place will be at the Kennedy School, at the West Somerville Neighborhood School, the Healy School, Somerville High School, the East Somerville Community School, and citywide. The city is methodically investigating the mechanical systems in school buildings, starting with the retro-commissioning or stress testing of heating, ventilation, air and air conditioning, again, the HVAC systems and their controls. The third section is the partnership with the city to increase parking availability for staff around school buildings, particularly those without a dedicated lot and a large staff, and to reduce parking demand by incentivizing alternate modes of transportation. The mobility department mobility is a priority across both the city and school administrations. The city's parking department issues free on-street parking passes to SPS staff, which everyone knows, to improve travel choices and to advance Somerville's commitment to climate-friendly transportation. Mayor Ballantyne also approved the use of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funds and operating budget funds to provide free universal MBTA passes to both SPS and city employees. In addition, the city provides free Blue Bikes bike share passes to city and Somerville Public School staff, which includes a reduced cost benefit for the use of the system's new electric assist Blue Bike program. So again, that was a high-level analysis of the first iteration of the biannual memo between the school committee and the SEU. If there are any questions, I will answer them if I can. If not, I will refer them to the city. And I also know that you received this today, so you may not really have had a chance to digest or dive into this. So if there aren't any questions and you come up with questions later, please send them to me, and I will make sure that they get answered appropriately.
Thank you. I have Dr. Phillips.
Thanks for this. Thanks for all the work. Just a follow-up from our conversation at Finance and Facilities last week related to this. I've just been looking at a couple updates to the school committee from February and March of 2021, where the city is talking about the CO2 monitors we have in our classrooms to be monitoring our ventilation. I recall that we were giving the SEU updates on how the classrooms were going, and I'm just wondering kind of what happened to that. Is that still available?
Through the chair, I will check and get back to you. Absolutely.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, Ms. Barish.
I was going to ask a related question, so I'll find out when you are able to answer, Dr. Phillips. I was curious about the plan for new roofs at West and Healy. Do you know if those will be able to, do you know if the work can be completed over the summer or while school is not in session, or will there be a disruption to learning from that process?
Through the chair, I will get that answer for you, as well as the answer for Vice Chair Phillips.
Hello?
Sorry, I have one more question. It's not a follow-up, though, so if someone else has a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through you, I think it was in our last meeting, we talked a bit about the stairs outside Next Wave Full Circle. Someone mentioned to me today that they're, again, not being shoveled, and they also mentioned, I think, the driveway. Do you know if the driveway to Next Wave Full Circle is to be used? And if so, is it going to be cleared by the city in the future?
Through the chair, so I don't know if you are familiar with the challenge at the high school. There is a warranty on the concrete. Any de-icing material or agents will void the warranty on that. And so
For 1 year.
just for 1 year, correct? Yes.
Do you know how long the warranty is for?
It's Not sure, but I think the issue is that the cement has to cure, and so is in the curing stages in this first year. That is a good question. I asked that question. I don't think I have an answer yet. Okay. But so that's basically the premise of that. And so we just had a meeting this afternoon in which my ask was that I understand that we have to be safeguard our investments, but I also know that the significant investments on the most vulnerable populations in our district, like the students who go to CTE and are trying to earn their credits, will be impacted by that. So I am urging the city to help us think about creative ways to look at that. I know that the response has been it is an issue of safety because once you remove the snow and if it melts, it creates a sheet of ice. And so sand is an option, but sand doesn't melt any ice in any formation of ice. So that's a challenge, and we're trying to figure it out. Again, we just had a meeting a minute ago in which we basically didn't come to a resolution that was optimal for us. And the same applies to the stairs going from the train station all the way up to our New Wave and Full Circle. So they are not treated because of the same reason. Again, that's not an optimal solution for us at this point, but we are working with the city, urging the city to think about ways to be creative about that space. Yeah.
Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, I was just curious about the driveway as well. Is that a similar situation, or?
The driveway that leads to, from the high school down, or?
Like right out here, isn't there like a driveway that leads from School Street up to the Next Wave Full Circle entrance?
Yeah. Is that the automotive bays? That's where the bays are? Yeah, so that's the area that is not being plowed. So both that area plus the stairs that lead down to the train station.
Okay, so the driveway is also an issue of voiding the warranty.
Correct. All that area is except for the stairs that lead to our alternative high school. Yep. That area was in place, so you can actually is being treated, except for those two, the stairs as well as the driveway.
Thank you. I apologize. I misunderstood.
Mr. Mazza wanted to also respond.
Oh, yes, through the chair. So even with that loop not being plowed, there is access to the CT Automotive. That's one of the big things that we were concerned about. If you close that gate, the students do not have access to those hands-on learning experiences that they need, and they wouldn't get their number of hours that are required. So the gate is open, and I think 2 to 3 cars per day enter, so students have the live cars to work on. In terms of Next Wave Full Circle, parents do not use that to drop off students. They use the upper lot up here by City Hall, and students walk down their main stairs. But some students do walk from School Street to Next Wave Full Circle.
So I have Mr. Bitone, and then Mr. Green, and then Dr. Ackman, and then Ms. Bitone. Mr. Bitone?
Thank you. Through the chair, I am very excited to see this development about the 311 school building data submission report and dashboard. I think this is a phenomenal development, and I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Mr. Bitone, can you start again? We didn't hear the beginning.
Oh, I apologize.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. So through the chair, I was just sharing my excitement about the 311 dashboard around school building data submissions and the ability to develop reports. I guess I'll cut to my question, which is, we on school committee sometimes hear from constituents who share concerns about building maintenance or items that are needing to be addressed. Received one today around bathroom facilities at the Edgerly. And I'm wondering if that work around prioritizing the requests that Mr. Mazza is or will be doing in partnership with others at the city. If we on school committee can get some indication about items that are not being prioritized due to either resources or, if they're not seen as critical, just so that we have a sense of what's happening before we hear from constituents.
Mr. Mazza?
Through the chair, yes, I can certainly do that. One of the things that I always look for when thinking about prioritization of submissions is around health and safety. And it requires a strong partnership with the Department of Public Works to make sure that things that need to get done in a timely fashion. But I can certainly create a memo for the committee in terms of what things aren't necessarily priority one, but still need to get done. Is that the question you were asking?
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I have Mr. Green.
Thank you. Through you to the superintendent. While you were asking for more information about the policies and warranties, I did have some questions come up in conversations I've had this last week. How do we actually use those warranties? Like, what is the actual risk here? I certainly respect our desire to, be prudent stewards of our money, but part of that is weighing the risk of voiding the warranty, rating the almost certainty of someone hurting themselves. And to that end, also, apparently Montreal is considered the gold standard for municipal snow removal. And their approach to this issue of, well, you can't de-ice New Conch Street, is they just sand every snowfall, which I understand is labor intensive, but if that's the only approach we have, then I think we need to be pushing the DPW to make that a priority.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, that is a good question. I think, again, I don't know what's, I did have a conversation with the mayor at some point about what are the models in Montreal, so I know that conversation didn't ended up in any concrete results, but we did talk about what are some of the ways that we can creatively figure this out. This is not the end of the conversation. I know that in the meeting that we just had earlier for the high school, there were 4 voices that were on the same place as to how can we do this. I have to say, and just to also acknowledge the hard work that I have seen from DPW. We had a couple of incidents at the high school in which we had ice and snow. Late at night, DPW showed up on time. Over the weekend, they were checking every school. So I have to say that the minutes and the times that I have asked them to come and remove the snow has been a very swift and immediate response. So I have to acknowledge that. And I also have to say that this challenge about the snow removal is one that has been driven by I don't want to say a technicality, but an issue of, I hear that, this is, I don't know the cost of this, what it will cost to disrupt it, but I understand that there is a question around how do we keep track of our city investments. So again, that will be, that question about what are we talking about in terms of the warranty, how many years, that's a question that I don't have an answer yet.
I have Dr. Ackman and then Ms. Paton.
Thank you. Through the chair, I know I've definitely had this conversation with Assistant Superintendent Mazza, over the years, as we are fortunate enough to have MSBA funds for a new school, and as we are brutally suffering through the lessons learned of the previous MSBA funded school, I hope somewhere that there's documentation of, I'm going to call them lessons learned, and maybe some things couldn't have been foreseen, but, we're fortunate enough to receive these funds in pretty close succession And so I'm hoping, you know, we use the knowledge and you know, as a new school gets built, we can, you know, keep this in mind.
Ms. Pachon?
Thank you, through you. Thank you for this detailed information. I had a question about the Otis Street Bridge, which is the overpass over the McGrath. And I know it's complicated, just so everyone knows, it gets maintained by the state, not by the city. And so, you know, what's the directive to the parents? You know, I get an email with a picture of super slushy, icy bridge, and, you know, they can call 311, but there is no, I mean, is that the best way for parents to elevate this? Obviously, they're going to tell the principal, but I don't know if the city is trying to monitor it. I'm just throwing thoughts and concerns about how do we maintain this.
Did you respond to that?
I do have a response that is, as that is literally my street in my neighborhood. Just before, like, we get a formal one, the apartment building that is there, the people who developed that place, because when it used to be not an apartment building, committed to maintaining that bridge as part of the variance they got to build there, and I think in part lack of parking spaces. I don't remember if that piece is correct. I don't think the city has ever held them to account for that. So just before there's, you know, there are obviously formal channels, I'm wondering that if that, you know, if maybe we need to be pushing a little harder on that.
Interesting. Mr. Mazza, did you want to also respond?
Sure, yes, through you. So we will, excuse me, we will explore that. Thank you for bringing that up. That's great information. But in terms of the other reporting, yes, 311, if they tell Principal Goslin, she will call me immediately, and then I can call Commissioner Lathan, and we can expedite that process.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Dr. Ackerman's excellent point about lessons learned. And this might tie into what was the later conversation about that decision memo, which I have real questions about. But one of the things I would think we would love to do is we paid former Superintendent Parentazzi to lead the last building process as a consultant. And I would love to bring him before school committee at some point in the nearest future to get his impression on, you know, things that if we knew now, we knew then, we could have done differently, so that we can start the project on the right foot.
That's a good idea. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Dr. Kamar, our next item.
There's another component of the report from.
We have a personnel report. Is there anything you want to
No, there's another two pieces of the. Did we do the other one about the greening of the buildings and also the?
You did them all.
Oh, you did them all? Okay, great. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so I have the personnel report.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
And just want to congratulate some of our employees. There's two retirements. Mr. Wallace from Automotive, after 16 years of service, he is retiring. So congratulations, Mr. Wallace. And Teresa Delgado Castilla, she's a science teacher, and after 7 years of service with us, she is going to be retiring. So congratulations to our employees who will be facing a new pathway in their lives. I also have two announcements. Paula Chavez and Gina Natali, both of them are moving from paraprofessionals to teachers. And so they are, one is at the AFS and the other one at the Capuano, but that's always a source of celebration in my mind every time we actually support a career pathway from paraprofessional to teacher. And also, we continue to hire paraprofessionals and substitutes, so the word is out there. We actually pay very competitive rates in comparison to our other comparables in the Commonwealth. And also, we have a new automotive instructor, Joshua Richardson, so welcome to the district, Joshua. And that's it for the report.
Great. Okay, that brings us to 2 subcommittee reports. I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the Finance and Ed Programs Subcommittee reports.
Second?
I have a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Dr. Phillips. Is there any discussion?
Actually,
Yep.
Sorry, for the ed programs, I put in there that something was going to be revisited at the June ed programs, and it's going to be revisited April ed program, so that needs to be corrected.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Phillips?
I move to approve the December local bill rolls.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Phillips, seconded by Dr. Ackman, to approve the December bill rolls. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to the MSBA timeline update. Dr. Carmona.
Thank you, Chair Cruption. Last time I was here sharing the MSBA timeline, I feel that that was a very rushed process, and so I wanted to discuss a little bit about what the timeline implies for us, as well as I wanted to give you a little bit of I provide a response on the question about the decision-making process through the MSBA process. So I included in your document some information about the timeline from the prior presentation that I did, but I just want to go through this quickly. It's a very simple timeline. Basically, we are in the eligibility period. So that begins in March 4 and ends on November 29. So that's the first phase of the process. That eligibility period ends with the feasibility period. And so I'm just going to describe quickly what the eligibility phase is. And there are a bunch of deliverables that I think that most of them are somewhat basic, but I think it requires your attention. There is an initial compliance certification that both the chair and myself and the mayor have to sign. So that's due on April 4. It's just a certification of compliance. I don't know the language itself, but it will be getting it around February, so we'll be able to share that with you once we get it. A month after that, we actually have another deliverable. By May 4, we have to complete the formation of the school building committee. So that's one thing that we all have been talking about. What is that about? Who decides who goes in there? So that's a process that I actually will describe a little bit on my next part of the MSBA process. But as far as the timeline goes, it's due by May 4, and is signed by the mayor. Once that is completed, it's submitted to MSBA for approval. And as you know, there are some basic requirements of who is involved in that. In the SBC, I actually reviewed the one prior to the high school, the one from the high school, and it's a very similar membership that we submitted, the city submitted for approval. So I can get into that in a minute in terms of what might be our future and the school building committee's makeup. And then 90 days after that, by June 4, we have to submit something called the EPQ, which is the Educational Profile Questionnaire. And this is a document in which we all get involved. It actually engages in the process of the context of the project, the enrollment process. It identifies the issues of challenges that we face, the needs, as well as what is the vision for our future facilities. So that's called the EPQ. It's supposedly a very robust process. I haven't seen the questions yet, but it's something that will require our attention, and they suggested as soon as we get that to get going on that. So once I get that document, I'll be sharing it with you. And then on June 4, we also have something called the enrollment submission, and that is basically enrollment data, housing data, information about private schools, and that's information that MSBA will take into account before we move into the other phases. Then by August 30th, we have 2 deliverables. One is an agreement on enrollment certification, and that is a letter that both the mayor, the chair, and myself need to sign, and it's basically we are certifying our enrollment at that point. And then we also have to provide a maintenance and capital planning information, and this is a report that outlines the historical practices that we have in our district and how we actually deal with our maintenance. And the final activity or deliverable in this phase is on November 29, and that's basically a vote that is required to move into the feasibility phase of the process. Basically, that is a vote that the City Council will take on appropriating the funds for the feasibility study. Now, that vote already happened. I believe the city already appropriated those funds. However, they didn't use the language that MSBA requires, so we have to go through that process again. And so that's funds that will typically be set aside for hiring an OPM, hiring a designer, as well as conducting environmental and site testing, as well as any contingencies related to the expenses of the building. So that's basically the timeline. I can go to the next phase, which I think is a more interesting part of the conversation that I wanted to share with you about what is the scope of the current MSBA process as I understand it, because I know that the city has a significant involvement in this process, and this hasn't been vetted through the city, but has been vetted through the MSBA, as well as the documentation that we have on the prior history of our MSBA process. So, in front of you, you have the MSBA process cheat sheet, and so I think that this will give us a question. There have been several questions as to what is the role of the school committee, and so I'll get into that in a minute. One of the things that I wanted to highlight for you, last time we were here, there was a question about, can we actually think about the middle school option as we think about what kind of a school do we want to build for the future? And so we reached out to MSBA, and they were very clear that this process will only fund several options, which is Winter Hill or the Winter Hill of the Brown and the Brown schools in combination. So that's one option. And the MSBA does not address district-wide needs, and that includes the middle school model. So just, you know, that's basically, they will not fund two separate buildings. They will fund a building with a solution for both schools, but that is what was stated in the SOI. So the only way, if we actually want to pursue a different option, we have to withdraw our SOI and then fall into the queue again and wait until that process will continue again. So there's no guarantee that that is going to work, but it's basically the boundaries or the guardrails of the options that we have. So it's either Winter Hill in whatever form we decide, Winter Hill and Brown, but not two separate options. That's based on the MSBA responses. There was a question that came last time we were here, which was, who is the decision maker in the MSBA process? I think that's a great question, one in which usually the answer has been the community, but I think there's more nuance to that. And so I wanted to just basically highlight what's in the language in here, and I'm going to read that because I want some clarity. I want to make sure that the clarity is provided by the document you have here. And so the School Building Committee, the SBC, will be the formal voting authority for the MSBA process. The SBC will decide things like school building design, location, and whether the Winter Hill and the Brown School should combine or remain separate. Under MSBA requirements, the School Building Committee for the current process might be formed and submitted to the MSBA for approval by May 3rd, 2024, as I stated earlier. The MSBA provides minimum requirements for memberships of the SBC. In addition to these members, the city may appoint additional members at their discretion. All members are subject to final approval by the MSBA. The mayor has the authority to appoint individual representatives to the School Building Committee so long as the appointees meet the requirements of the School Building Committee membership as prescribed by the MSBA. While the superintendent will be on the school building committee, as prescribed by the MSBA, the superintendent does not have the authority to appoint members to the school building committee. The document that I review in terms of the membership is very similar from the different members that we have prior to the high school building. So it's the only difference that we have from the last building committee that we had is that this one, the new one, had a student representative, which is not even included in the guidelines by the MSBA, but they approved that, as well as 7 other members. In the prior MSBA membership, I guess, we had only 1 extra member outside from the guidelines that MSBA provides. So the mayor has final decision-making authority for many aspects of the project. The mayor has the authority to appoint individual representatives to the school building committee so long as the appointees meet the requirements of the school building committee membership as prescribed by the MSBA. The mayor and city council submit final funding authorizations as recommended by the SBC prior to construction. The city council also has a strong role in this process. They must vote to appropriate funds for the feasibility study phase of the project and also separately for the construction of the project. So that part already happened. They approved the feasibility at some point. Again, we have to do a vote again because the language has to be included, MSBA language. And because of the cost of the construction of the project will require that funds be borrowed, the city council must vote to authorize the borrowing by a 2/3 vote of the city council. Due to the estimated cost of construction of the project, the city anticipates seeking a debt exclusion vote. A 2/3 vote of the city council is required to bring a debt exclusion vote. And the mayor's approval is also required in order to bring a debt exclusion vote. We also have the role of the residents in the city of Somerville. They will basically have to approve our debt exclusion, and also the mayor and the city have the authority to make the final appropriation of the funds. So how is the school committee involved, which was one of the questions that came up last time that we were here. So the chair of the school committee will need to sign the initial certificate of compliance that is due to the MSBA to kick off the eligibility period in April. So that's the first thing that both the chair, myself, and the mayor will sign. And the MSBA requires that school building committees have at least 1 member of the school committee. At least 1 member of the school committee must attend the MSBA pre-study review meeting. The chair of the school committee will need to sign the enrollment certification that is due to the MSBA by August of this year. And once the feasibility study is completed, the MSBA will typically invite members of the school committee to attend a conference regarding project scope and budget matters. So I hope this provides a much more comprehensive response to the question that came when we were here before about the timeline and the role of the school committee. So now I'm going to pass it along to the chair for further discussions.
Mr. Green?
Sorry. A couple questions. I'll ask one and then go back in the queue, if that's what we need to do. Through you, Superintendent, has our lawyer vetted this document yet?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Has our lawyer vetted this document yet? Has our lawyer?
Yeah, so one of them, is that right? We have several, so the one who does, she has seen this document.
Okay, great. I'll get back in the queue.
Okay. Dr. Phillips?
Sorry. First of all, thank you for this document. Thank you for answering all of my questions. Hindsight is 20/20, and we are always operating with incomplete information, but I think it's important for us to be clear with the community, especially folks who are really excited about a middle school option, that the reason we can't have a middle school option now is because of decisions we made, right? When we decided to enter the SOI process before letting the city do their feasibility study, when we approved the draft SOI, right? Those were the decisions that shaped this, what we can and can't do. So I think it's important just for us to know that and for the community to know that.
Mr. Green, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I'm going to respectfully push back on that a little bit. The decisions we made mean that we can't use this MSBA project to do a middle school. If we choose to, after this MSBA project, and after we've had a community discussion, decide we want to pursue a middle school, we could pursue another MSBA thing to, for example, rehab the Cummings or do something else. It just means we can't do as we were actually asked in public comment today not to do, we can't use the Winter Hill project to have MSBA pay for a middle school project. We could even pursue, although I suspect that the city would be skeptical, paying for middle school project or middle school rehab ourselves. So like we still have options. We just don't have the option of at this moment in time using MSBA, the current MSBA project to build a middle school. So when we are being clear with the community, we also need to clear those nuances.
Through the chair, you're right, Andre, and I think we also have to be aware of the fact that the taxpayers already are bearing the cost of the high school building. You're right as to we can actually do it separately from the MSBA process. It will be a significant cost. I hear numbers of $300 and $350 million. And the other thing that I'm thinking, again, this is just, I think I am brainstorming out loud. It might be a dangerous thing, but there's nothing that holds us back but from basically once the building is built or as we build the building, that we can create a building that is flexible enough for not just the future of the next 10 years, but the next 50 or 40 years. And so that is a question that you will be involved in the actual process of the one that is due in, well, is the scope of the project. But I think that the reality of that is that once it is built, who inhabits the building is a different question.
Mr. Green?
Thank you. I couldn't actually agree more. I was actually going to be my next comment, which is, while it is true that the building committee gets to decide the design of the building, location of the building, it is still our responsibility to decide who goes in that building once it's built. And as you said, everything that requires the chair of the school committee to be signed requires a vote of this body to authorize the chair to sign. So we have several leverage points in informal ways that should help us influence getting the building we think best meets the district's needs.
You want to respond? Still thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, so part of that, one of the things, so I think I want to piggyback on what Dr. Phyllis said, is that, I came into the district and there are some things that were in motion already, is that right? So this idea that we faced an emergency situation in which we had to respond to a crisis, and so, but the SOI was in motion prior to that, is that right? So that was something that was basically ended up on my lap. So we are solving for the K-8 challenge, and so as this is evolving, I am reflecting on and we will have the conversation about the middle school in the next phase of this. But I just wanted to highlight that it is not a lack of willingness, but is also I want to make sure we also have it. We have data to address the issue that is in front of us. And one of the things that I did, that I promised the Winter Hill community when I was in front of them, the first time we met, is that we were going to solve their challenge, which was they wanted to keep the community together. They wanted to be in the same location. And what I said is that we will definitely respond to their needs, but there are variables that need to be accounted for as we get more information through this process. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that as we look at the other options that are being discussed, we need to make sure that we also solve the immediacy of the need of the Winter Hill community. That was the first one that came to for discussion for all of us.
And I just wanted to make a practical comment to Mr. Green's point about this body needing to vote to authorize the chair to sign. I just want to make sure that whatever I need to sign is on our agenda well in advance of when I need to sign it by. So, if this needs to be signed by April, we have to make sure it's on an agenda in March. Ms. Paton.
Thank you. Through you, to the superintendent and to the body. My understanding is that, and maybe I'm reading some of this documentation wrong, that there is some sort of local discretion in terms of who goes on to the building committee. and that I know there's certain roles and responsibilities they require to be on it, but as you said, there's several members. We chose to have a student, and I would encourage the superintendent and the chair to be part of conversations with the mayor's office regarding what's going to be the most effective representation of the community, whether it's parents, whether it's here, it particularly says that there should be people who have experience in construction, and that, you know, members of the community that can provide that point of view, and obviously, you know, is reflective of the, you know, the student community in terms of the demographics, which I don't think our current committee was, but I'm sure there was a lot of complexities in putting that one together. But I also wanted to comment on if there are conversations that we as a body want to have about, for example, the structure, whether or not it's one building or two buildings or a combination of two communities. I think this body has the right to have those conversations. This body has the right to make their own motions and vote on them. This body has the right to direct the superintendent to represent in a certain way, as well as give direction to whoever the school committee's representatives are on this body. So I think it's important that we recognize that we don't necessarily go like this and say, your problem. They're also going to have different data and different resources, and, you know, they're going to be very immersed in terms of that committee. But we still have the responsibility to be part of that conversation as much as we choose to.
Mr. Green, other questions or comments? Seeing none, that brings us to our next item of business, which is long-range plans to discuss a middle school model. Do you want to frame that for us?
No, no, I do. I really do. No, so yeah, the evolution of the question about who we are as a community and what do we want to become is one that, in my mind, has evolved. I came in with the understanding that we were the most densely populated community in Massachusetts. We are now 4 square mile. And I was told that, you know, we value that, we treasure that as part of our who we are, and so the notion of the schools being part of the close-knit communities in which they were, the idea that we were a community school in which we also chose a school, that was to me part of the identity that I understood was who we are and who we were. And so there is a lot of tradition in the K through 8 in our district, and so that was my understanding. As I have gathered feedback from folks, I know middle school teachers have, or K through 8 teachers in the middle school area have shared their concern. I know I heard it from this group, I heard it from families. It has come up in some of the focus groups. So my understanding of the question was, as part of my entry plan, was to address this question through the entry plan process, which is, as we actually do this in a systematic way, we actually have to understand what are the root cause analysis here also. So there is an understanding. I want to make sure that everyone has a clear picture of what is the issue. And so I'm still unclear. There are some concerns about the transition. There are some concerns about the scale. There are some concerns about making sure that we have that students have other opportunities that they currently don't have. I know also teachers have complained that they don't have enough exchange with other teachers. So I understand those are some of the surface level questions that have come up. My understanding from the research that I have done and from the research that folks have shared with me in terms of outcomes and impact, there is not a significant difference. But I do know that I've been in K through 8 schools. For 5 years I was a leader in one K through 8 school, and there are some significant challenges in terms of providing access and transitions and rite of passages for middle school students. So the cases in which that happens well are counted. And so there is a challenge in terms of that. But there is also significant value of making sure that students don't have a transition from elementary to middle school. When I hear from my superintendent colleagues, one of the things that they say to me is that you don't know how good you have it. Right now, our middle school students behave like high school students because it's the scale of having 500 or 1,000 kids in one space who are just going through their emotions and going through their transition of their reptile brains is a complicated process. And yet, I also hear that that's something we want to explore, and in order to do that, we need to do that in a systematic way. So I want to make sure that this was already built into part of my entry plan, just to address what are some of the concerns and then create some root cause analysis processes to determine what's the issue. What I mentioned to the chair and to the committee is that if you're voting or asking me to redirect attention to tackle the question of the middle school challenge or question that is coming up, I think that should be something that is voted to redirect my attentions to that. So I don't know how that works. And so I am open to that conversation. But I also want to make sure that we do this systematically. When I spoke to 3 different principals of K-8 schools, they have said to me, it hasn't come up much. In my lifetime, 5-7 years in this building, twice or 3 times. So I want to make sure that we are fixing the right things. And so I just wanted to frame this conversation. And I am curious, I'm interested, and I think that I also want to make sure that our identity as a community is clarified for all the community members.
Mr. Green, and then Dr. Ackman.
I want to thank. Wow, I want to thank you for that, Superintendent. I want to respond in kind of reverse order to the point about it not coming up. It's something that's been talked about in the background, at least as long as I've been on school committee. But like, the general feeling has been like, I think in part because there's a consensus that there's no like clear right answer. There's pros and cons to either way. That because we weren't doing a building redesign or anything like that, it didn't make sense to try to think about what it would look like, have this conversation. Obviously, we have that genie's been unleashed. I think it's actually a good thing that it's been made clear that this project this MSBA project won't pay for that, because I think it buys us time. I agree that like we're asking you to do a lot right now. Like the things we know you have to tackle more or less immediately. New Winter Hill School, revamping our ELA curriculum, finishing the revamp of our math curriculum. Any one of those could be for a superintendent a tenure defining process. And those are 3 things we know you have to do right now. And so I think we owe it to the community in the medium term to have this conversation now that it's been awoken. I'm fine with saying in our next budget we hire a consultant, a community facilitator, to handle that project and have a conversation and give it the time and space it deserves, since we're not under the gun for that decision right now. So that would be my proposal, is just put it in the next budget to have a consultant.
Dr. Ackman, and then Ms. Patel.
I mean, Mr. Green made like 3 of my points and 3 I hadn't considered, and I support it.
Ms. Patel.
Thank you, through you. This is a little bit related to Mr. Green's comments, but in order to make a decision that we want to have the superintendent extend resources onto something else, something new, I think it's important that the committee has a general long-range conversation about what are the things that the superintendent is putting their energy in. And so, I'll just put an example up. I'm not, like, this conversation, the idea of looking at middle schools is interesting because there's some interest in it. Same time, I'm also interested in pre-K and how we're delivering pre-K right now, and I feel like I'm not happy with our current structure. And, you know, without knowing what the other things, I'd hate to be considering just that and not that one. And I'm sure every other member has their own particular thing that they're concerned about that maybe is not on the table right now. So maybe probably 5 years ago, we did kind of a real long-range process where we went through and we put everything out on the table and everyone had a good conversation, and we went through a whole prioritization effort around the effort it would take to do something and the impact that it would have on the district, and we made priorities, and those turned into, like, whatever they were 5 years ago, our top goals. And I think that as an output of this entry plan, that's a nice time or an appropriate time for the school committee to get together and have that kind of long-range conversation. And, you know, bring all the issues that you have unearthed from your perspective, as well as what we have in our perspective of our years on school committee, and prioritized activities. So I feel like Mr. Green was appropriate to say, okay, we don't have to sit down today and have this conversation because the money issue has already, you know, made a short-term decision for ourselves, but that the follow-on to the entry plan, it could be really powerful that the committee works with the superintendent and does this kind of prioritization activity and says, is this something that comes in the top 3 things, or is this something that's maybe next year or the year after?
Dr. Phillips?
Thanks. I'm pretty agnostic about whether we have middle school model or not, right? It seems like a good way to solve our district space needs immediately, but we can't do it, so it doesn't matter. What I am concerned about, though, is that the city is making a K-8 master plan, and I'm not sure that the school department or school committee has set a vision for that master plan. And so while I agree, right, like there are many more pressing things for the superintendent to focus on, I am also concerned about the city releasing a K-8 master plan that really has no visioning from the education leadership and is really about seats and where we need seats. So I don't know how we resolve that tension, but it feels like one.
Mr. Green?
This sounds flippant, but it's not. I think to Vice Chair Phillips' point, part of it is we tell we make it clear to the city that you don't get to do a master plan for the K-8s without having this conversation. You can do a short-term emergency plan for how do we build a new winter in a school, but a master plan for K involves a longer conversation, which we have to be part of, that requires a public component. Like if that's the end goal, Dr. Phillips is right. We're not ready for that yet, and I think we just have to be clear to the city on that.
Mr. Butone has a comment from Zoom.
Thank you, through the chair. Boy, I wish I could be there in person with you. I'm grateful for the information the superintendent provided, both in the cheat sheet and with respect to the addressing this question about middle school in the entry plan. I want to emphasize the point that Dr. Phillips made about the process that is going on right now about a master plan for K through 8, and whether or not, to Mr. Green's point, the city can do that. They are doing that. And I think the longer we stay silent on this matter, the more other bodies will make decisions for us. So whether it is us allocating funds to do this in some future year or beginning to address this question ourselves in some exploratory way. I'm not, to be clear, I'm not offering any solutions, and I see that that point. So I ask for my colleagues' forgiveness there, but I do think that it is something that we need to begin hearing from our constituents, from students about, and if that is in the timeline of the entry plan, I think that's great, and that can be an opening to a conversation. So perhaps that is a timeline for us to begin having that thinking about how we want to address it, whether it's through engaging through a consultant in some future year or right now, but we need something to put the brakes on, or at least inform what the city's master plan is going to be. That's all for me.
Also, just to be clear, as we discussed earlier, the city has control over the buildings, but what happens inside the buildings is still our decision. So I'm not saying that we're going to actively work against whatever this city's K-8 master plan is, but it also, what we decide inside the building supersedes what they're saying anyway, if I'm understanding it correctly. Dr. Carmona?
Through the chair. So a couple of things. I don't know what came first. Was it that when I was coming in and I transitioned through Jeff Curley, there was never a conversation about anything else but a K-8 system. And so I don't want to blame the city or say the city is being blindsided, is being short-sighted because never perceived anything else. But that question about the K-8 is my understanding is that it was our ask to the system that we had, because that's where we lived in. And everything, the website, everything, before coming into the district, this is who we were, a K-8 system. So I think that, I wanted to piggyback on what you said, Chair Kripchen, is that, yes, whatever goes inside of a building is our purview. We actually control that. The offerings that we offer, that we provide, the programs, that's the school committee. Do you tell me? And we collaborate on that process. But I just want to separate the fact that it's not. I might be wrong, but my understanding is that was kind of what was in the space. That's what you lived through, and that was your reality, and that was the K-8 model. So I don't think I think if we are actually again. I am a little bit cautious about, let's be creative about solving things right now, because right now we're in a course of getting many things going. I just wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Green said, is that we are working on 3 initiatives around curriculum and instruction. We don't have a solid MTSS system. Like, we don't have a layer of support for our large number of students that are not making it on a daily basis. We have significant needs on social-emotional needs across the board. We don't have an umbrella comprehensive system of social-emotional learning for all of our students. If you look at our website and you think about what is our statement around social-emotional needs, is in different places. We're integrating things. We have responsive classroom, and we have second step, we have restorative justice. We're just trying to kind of make sure these things are working together. And so we have, we don't have enough coaches either, and one of my desires is to make sure that we have a coach in every building, not tomorrow, but there are so many things that need to happen with our instruction and our sense of achievement across the board that I do worry when we have to be creative to start putting things on top of the things that are already in place. So I just urge you to think about how is the process that we have in place of getting to understand our strengths and weaknesses, and then what comes out of that, with on top of some of the things that you're suggesting, that we be careful about how we load the plate, because that can be detrimental to the work that we're doing right now.
I have Mr. Green, Ms. Barish, and then Dr. Ackman. Mr. Green?
Sure. I was going to give some context. Yeah, I think Dr. Carmona is correct. Remember, I think it's all worth taking a step. We made the steps we made because we had a crisis, right? We had been talking hypothetically about a new Winter Hill since before the current mayor took office. In fact, yeah, it was one of the 2 things that was brought up by then Superintendent Endai in her transition meeting when she was mayor-elect. But like, those theoretical conversations had to become real quick, because we lost the use of the Winter Hill School. And so it makes perfect sense to respond to that in terms of the system we've known since the 80s. I think it was somewhere in the 80s when Somerville moved from a middle school model to a K-8 model. And so that makes sense, and it's, I think, still the right thing to do. Like, we need to get a new Winter Hill School online as fast as possible. And if that means we can't use that as a leverage point for larger conversations with the schools, so be it. But to Mr. Patone's point, I want to actually refer back to Ms. Patone's point, which is that I don't think we're even in a position where we know what questions we're asking. Like, there are those people who have a conversation about middle schools. I might be one of them. I'm not 100% sure, but it's certainly not the only question that we need to be asking. It may not be the most important question we need to be asking. Like, we can't have a community conversation, even a community conversation really, until we as a body have some sense of what are the options on the table. Like, do we want to discuss what it means to have neighborhood schools? Do we want to, like, if we're going to have these big macro level questions, I don't want to be knee-jerk about which ones we tackle.
Ms. Parrish?
Thank you. Through you, I was just reflecting on the fact that the city is working on a K-8 master plan doesn't necessarily mean that they're focusing on a K-8 model. It just means that they're talking about students in grades K-8. At least that's what I'm imagining. The point stands that, for the city to make this plan and to tell us what should happen with our schools may be problematic, but they aren't necessarily saying we will have K-8 schools going forward.
That is a good point. Dr. Ackman?
Thank you. Through the chair, I think something else I feel like we have not addressed head-on in talking about, requests for a middle school model is, I think what we've heard and undertones are like a clear dissatisfaction in how we are differentiating for middle grade students in our K-8 schools. And so in the curricular shifts, in what we're thinking with out of school time, I think, especially since it does seem like, given what we're dealing with right now, this consideration of a shift needs to be a medium-term goal. I do hope the administration keeps talking about the ways that we are more clearly considering our middle grade students, our middle grade educators, because you can differentiate within a building. That's not an unreasonable thing. So I think that is at least my hope is I hear the explicit request, and what I am hearing in them is a dissatisfaction, and that's the conclusion that's being jumped to. But I hope that if we're working to address it, then that can still be a consideration down the line. But let's be addressing the dissatisfaction sooner.
Mr. Green?
I think actually Dr. Ackman brings it back full circle to how Dr. Cohen framed the question originally, which is, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And I believe, certainly from my conversations with people I've had throughout my career on school committee, there's a fairly widespread sense, and I think the data points we do have may back it up, that our middle grades are our weak spot. And so I think the problem we're trying to solve is, fairly otherwise, that is the perception people have of our schools, is that there's something that if we have a weak spot academically, it's our middle grades, and they're trying to address that.
Yeah, please.
Through the chair, so when we talked about developmental, how developmentally appropriate is our design, we always think about early childhood and we think about developmentally appropriate practices. The same applies for middle school. One of the things, and kids are great. Kids tell you, like during the focus groups, one of the kids said to me, I just don't get it. Why do we have to have the same lunch size for a kindergartner and an 8th grader? And it's like, and so that's the reference point for me, is like, are we developmentally appropriate in terms of, and I don't want to cast that question as a question in regards to our capacity to do that from the teacher's perspective, because they are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Is that right? But I think as our system, like, how are we reflecting the practices to adjust them for middle school students? You know, in talking to Dr. Davis Boston here, at some point she said to me, you know, we kind of operate as an elementary district. When we look at our offerings for middle school, often is like, it has taken us longer to get to that point. And so I think that the immediacy of like looking at our practices for middle school is one thing that regardless of what we do is a conversation from the instructional perspective that I was planning on embarking on. And so if it anything, starting the conversation about what is it that we're trying to solve, I already have some mandate by students and by families that have said to me, there are some things that we want to address. And so those will be, I mean, and so and I'm sorry that I probably am talking too much, but there's two things here. Often when you look at your data and you say, how are our kids progressing? By second grade, most of our kids should be reading and should be switching to reading to learn, because in the early grades is learning to read, and beyond second grade is reading to learn. And yet, if our numbers of students that are in such a category of needing that support because they are non-readers or they have significant challenges, usually the investment is at the lower level to make sure that kids by third grade already know how to read. So there's a financial commitment there. But also on the other end is how are our middle school students leaving the middle school and getting into high school. So I just wanted to preface that this conversation also has an implication for budgets. And so there's more, and we're in the middle of a budget process in which most of the numbers are already tied up. And so I have to do some magic to be able to think about how do we reset our work and account for both the needs at the lower level and as well as the middle school level.
Ms. Patone and then Mr. Green.
Did you want to follow up to that? I will defer and then follow up.
I just want to make sure I'm hearing the superintendent correctly. Are you suggesting that perhaps we should develop a new curriculum, then figure out the best way to deliver it?
So, curriculum? No, Dr. Davis will share anything about curriculum surprises there.
Thanks to the chair. Did I hear curriculum? No, just joking. I think that we have an ed program scheduled where we're going to talk in depth about curricular shifts for middle grades, but we are thinking deeply about middle grades, putting additional attention that is needed, particularly around, we just launched a curriculum selection committee for grades 6 through 8, so squarely in our middle grades for ELA, led by Kathleen Seward. And as you all know, we've rolled out illustrative mathematics in grades 6 through 8 we're in the rollout phase for K through 8, but we've already rolled it out in grades 6 through 8. So we are thinking deeply every single day about best supporting middle grade students from an academic standpoint, and really all of our students in thinking about the curricular shift. So there's a lot of work being done there, and can talk more about it in the ed programs meeting.
Ms. Patone and then Dr. Ekman. Go ahead.
For my colleagues and for anyone who may still be paying attention, that's scheduled for April 4th. And I want to be clear, ed programs has shifted to being virtual during the weekdays, like around 2:45, with the goal of we record them and they're supposed to go on the district's website. You know, there is no perfect way of managing it. We want to be respectful of district staff time, but we also want people to have access. So April 4th.
Ms. Patone?
Thank you, through you to the superintendent. So from my perspective, I would not recommend that we make any motion today to say, Superintendent Carmona, please start shifting your gears and allocating time to middle school models right now, or considering middle school models. This is my opinion. However, I would also like to ask the chair and the superintendent to think about how this entry plan rolls into a conversation, a strategic conversation with the school committee in terms of considering those things as well as other, like I said, lots, like bilingual education in Portuguese. Like, I could give you a whole list of all things that I'm very excited that I would like to think, when I say long range, I'm like 5-10 years, not tomorrow. And I could go on and on. So, I'm asking the superintendent and the chair to think about where that conversation could be started and what kind of format and structure, most importantly with the input of your findings from the entry plan, because I think what you're hearing in the entry plan may be a little bit different than what some of our members are hearing from specific advocates, not to minimize the perspective of these specific advocates. They are very important, but I think that the superintendent hopefully is getting a broader view, and I'd love to weigh these concerns that we may be hearing from some parents with the holistic perspective that you're getting through the community, through the more comprehensive entry plan. So it's about timing and process. In the future.
Mr. Green and then Mr. Bitone. Mr. Green?
I just wanted to build upon Ms. Patone's point and actually give the superintendent incredible credit. I meant to do this during the report, but by my math, you got 1,500 student responses, 500 family responses, of whom 388 or whatever it was, I don't have them right in front of me, are families that received some sort of public support. So you were doing an amazing job of getting good, cross-cutting, diverse viewpoints in your entry plan. And so, yes, I 100% want that to drive the strategic questions, because you are doing an unprecedented job of actually getting the voices we don't hear from.
Mr. Bitone?
Thank you. Through the chair, I would like to echo Ms. Patone's suggestion and Mr. Green's add-on. So I'm another voice in this choir of really looking forward to seeing the results of the entry plan and appreciate all that great work.
Dr. Phillips?
I do appreciate Ms. Patone's point and Mr. Green's add-on, and at the same time, I want to throw down a motion so I move that the superintendent and the chair of the school committee approach the mayor and secure commitment not to finalize the K-8 master plan until the school committee can offer a vision for that plan, or come talk to the school committee about why that's not possible.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Phillips. Is there a second?
I will second that.
LeRon? Mr. Bitone, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I'm offering a second.
Okay. I have a motion by Dr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Bitone. Is there any discussion?
And through you, Chair Krepshin, to Dr. Phillips, can you repeat what you said?
Yep. That the superintendent and chair of the school committee reach out to the mayor and ask the city not to finalize the K master plan, so no, not finalize it, until the school committee can offer a facilities vision for that plan, or come talk to us about why that's not possible. So, right, just asking the city not to finalize it, right? And it's not giving us a timeline for when we're going to have a vision for facilities. I really appreciate that we don't want to do this now, but I'm also really concerned that the city's going to put out this K-8 master plan that A, has no vision, and B, does not have the school committee defining that vision.
Mr. Green?
It's a matter of precedent. We've, generally speaking, not had to give motions to ask the chair to go speak on our behalf. We just ask the chair. And y'all know me. I always worry about our precedents and creating new systems when we don't need to. Especially since we can also just ask the chair to invite the city to the next meeting to tell us what their plan is for the master plan, and then make decisions.
I am happy to do this without the motion, if that helps. But
I appreciate, I'm sorry, through your chair, I totally appreciate that you're willing to do this without the motion. And, right, there is a force and weight when we say something together, right? I would also like to ask the chair, how many times have you asked the city to come talk to us about the buildings? And how many times have they shown up?
Several and none.
So with that in mind, I would think there's a little force at this moment to just say, the school committee needs vision for this plan that we set to finalize it. Doesn't seem like such a big deal. But that's just me. I apologize.
Okay. I have a motion by Dr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Bitone. Is there any further discussion? I will have the superintendent call a roll call vote because I'm not sure how people feel about this.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Mayor Valentine, President Owen Campen, Mr. Green? Mr. Bitton?
Yes.
Ms. Bitton?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
No.
Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Chair Crepton?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 yes, the yes have it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? I think the homework for the superintendent and myself is to figure out when and how to have a further conversation about this when we have more information from Dr. Carmona's entry plan. So with that, that brings us to some diplomas that we get to approve. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve a FY24 scale/ADP diploma for Mohammed S. Miyagi of Boston, Massachusetts.
Motion by Ms. Parrish, seconded by Dr. Phillips. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We have some more diplomas.
I move to approve fiscal year 24 Somerville High School diploma for Catherine Cortez of Somerville, Massachusetts, and for Franklin Alvarado Zelaya of Somerville,
Second.
Massachusetts.
I have a motion by Ms. Parrish, seconded by Ms. Patone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations to all of our new graduates. That brings us to acceptance of grant funds.
I move to accept all federal entitlement and continuation grants and all state continuation grants awarded to the Somerville Public Schools listed below. State the collaborative kindness with Bren Badadan for $3,750 to support a guest artist's work with K-5 students at Healy to collaboratively generate sketches and a finished mural around the themes of kindness and community. And the Jean Apollon Multicultural Immersive Learning Experience grant of $4,607 to support a dance project at Somerville High School with JAE, whose dancers will collaborate with Somerville High School educators and students to teach, choreograph, and perform an original dance number for the entire Somerville High School community.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Patone, seconded by Ms. Parrish. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to donations.
I move to accept with gratitude the following donation of percussion band instruments from Arnold Johnson of Somerville, Massachusetts, valued at $10,750 to the music department.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Patone, seconded by Mr. Green. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to items from board members. Does anyone have any items? Ms. Patone?
Thank you, through you, Chair Krupchen. I wanted to briefly bring up some of the items that came up in the high school building committee today. I'm not doing a formal report, but the building committee has agreed to have additional meetings in March and May. This was going to be our last meeting, but there continues to be some issues associated with the bleachers, the hardware on the outdoors, the doors to the outside, as well as I think some issues with indoors too. And then there also, it sounds like we didn't even get a chance to discuss it, but the question of whether or not this field at the high school has been able to be used or not. My understanding, at least in the last month, that it had not been, but I'd love to hear anything about that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other items from board members? Mr. Green?
I just wanted to highlight for the public who may not know how impressive an accomplishment it is that ours at Somerville High routinely makes it to the quiz show, that, where it's almost inevitably Somerville High, maybe one other urban school, and a bunch of rich suburban schools and private schools. So the fact that we are consistently representing and we're consistently doing well is a remarkable accomplishment. I just want to make sure those kids get the credit they deserve.
Yes, Ms. Patone?
Through you, Chair Krupchen, I also want to add on is if anybody wants to be an audience member at the quiz show, it's super fun. I've brought my kids before. I think you can just go on the public television website and there's a link to get tickets. So I encourage anybody to go. It's super fun.
Do you know where it happens?
It's at the WGBH studios, which are in Alston.
Cool. Ms. Parrish?
I'll just add on that I saw that you also get free parking with your ticket, for what it's worth.
Thank you for that. That is worth a lot, actually. Any other questions? Comments? Items from board members? Seeing none, do we have any condolences? All right, then, with that, we are adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.